Hello, this is Rob Mazak, and I'd like to take a moment to welcome you to the Life by Mazak podcast channel. Here on this channel, anything is possible. Any subject will and usually is discussed, and there's no telling how this message will unfold as we work through an idea, through an experience, or through a thought. These subjects come from the vast amount of information and experience through spirit, through life lessons, and from working with a lot of other people. Scripts are never used on this channel, and the message simply unfolds as the subject is discussed. Follow along and see where it leads us, or more specifically, where it leads me. These podcasts are produced in the hopes of helping others to benefit, to grow, and to excel in their own human experience. At Life by Mazak, we work towards helping you achieve wellness for your mind, your body, and your soul using many specialized services. Services that include psychic medium and tarot readings, quantum healing hypnosis, past life regression, intuitive Reiki healing, life coaching, and many other services. If you enjoyed this podcast, please click the like button and share this with others. Our goal is to reach as many people as we can with the knowledge that is shared on this podcast channel. Good day to everybody. What I wanted to do in this podcast was really talk about the power of hypnosis, and can it in fact be used to control the mind or change processes of your life? Is it possible, actually? Well, in my experience, in a lot of ways, I've seen it happen. We will discuss that as we go along. But what are some of those possibilities and some of the limitations of that? Now, we've all heard and watched things like Jason Bourne movies, Hollywood scripts that really push people to believe that programming the mind is something that is actually happening out there. And I don't doubt that it is. And I do believe that programming the mind can actually happen, especially if you put somebody under duress, and eventually you will change the way you think, the way you do things, the way your life is lived. Can we actually start somebody on a mission or a change with a key word, like you see in these movies where somebody calls, says a phrase, and the next thing they know, they're on a mission that they don't even know that they're doing or why they're doing it. They just know that it should begin. And I would not disagree that key words or key phrases can actually trigger some sort of state of mind. Because in the practice that I use, which is the quantum healing hypnosis technique, which we'll probably talk more about, there is a process of inserting key words or phrases that are only relevant to the client. And the next time you want to do a session, you just use that phrase, and you can skip all of the things that happen in the normal process of bringing somebody down to that state where the conscious mind is turned off. And you can then do what you need to do, ask questions, reprogram, whatever. So I don't disagree that that actually happens. However, I do believe that a lot of people are actually beginning to believe more in hypnosis and the quality and effects and things that they can use it to change their life. One of the normal common practices for hypnosis in the clinical setting is for like anxiety, depression, things like that, weight loss, stop smoking, smoking cessation, things like that. And it is very effective, and it's very interesting because I remember the first time that I ever did a session on somebody, and I simply am just talking, and the next thing I know, they're completely down in the theta state, which is that state where you go to right before you go to sleep, where your dreams happen, things like that, which is the state we're really looking for. It is a really, really awesome modality We're also going to kind of circle back around later and look at some of the technology that may be involved in programming people from a distance. So we'll get back to that. But hypnosis has been around a long time. I think people realize the power of it. They may not have originally called it that. I mean, this goes way back to the Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, all that kind of stuff. They practiced that. And what they were doing is basically what they would consider healing rituals. And nowadays, or in the more modern times, 19th century, I guess, is kind of modern, a guy named James Brad, a Scottish surgeon, actually came up with the term hypnotism. He wanted to kind of take some of the mystification out of the process and really kind of drill down the definition of it a little bit better, so people were not so scared of it, I guess. And he called it a state of focused attention and heightened suggestibility. And obviously we have really evolved that into modern medicine. A lot of counselors use this, a lot of other people use this, and it does take a regimented training to do it properly and to make sure that you are not doing something unethical or immoral with that process, because hypnosis is really kind of a simple process if you think about it. I mean, obviously it's probably much more complicated at a lower or deeper vision of it, really drilling down into it, at the cellular level and in the level of the neurons and things like that. However, it's really simply trying to relax or turn off the conscious part of your brain, the conscious mind, which is, by most people's definition, 5 to 10% of the daily activity of the brain or the mind, and that the subconscious really is what is programmed to run your life. And so what we're trying to do is bypass the conscious mind, rather. I like to call it is Mr. or Mrs. Stupid, because it thinks it's in charge. It's not necessarily. What it's really in charge of is getting us through our day with purposeful actions. And it also is one of the most important parts, conscious mind, of helping to train the subconscious mind. And remember that the subconscious mind is something that is very suggestible, because it's like the private in the army that's listening to a general, and it's definitely never going to say no. It's going to salute the flag, and it's going to go on and program your life with whatever it's being bombarded with. You got to remember too that everything is energetic, and that it definitely affects your subconscious without really any filters. So, the pictures that you hang up in your house or your office, music you listen to, the shows you watch, wow, because the eyes actually have no firewall whatsoever. Whatever you take in visually goes straight to the subconscious. And we're talking like 11 million bits of information per second. That's a lot. And our conscious mind can only really narrow it down to about 40 bits of information per second. That's all it can handle. That's kind of the basis behind it. And then when you have somebody in that theta state, or that state of hypnotism, quote unquote, then this is where your subconscious is much more open to suggestions and going off to retrain your life based on those suggestions. So if you are practicing hypnosis, or you're going to learn it, or you find yourself doing it sometime, you got to be very mindful of what you're saying in that state. And, you can affect somebody's life. You can change where they're going. But what's interesting is that it can be used very, very positively if done properly. There are a lot of misconceptions, especially when you look at things like these hypnosis things that happen on the stage. Now, those do look real, and it seems like they are actually being hypnotized, but it's really more of a belief system, in my opinion, that they know they're entering, or they know that there's a possibility they're going to be hypnotized and do things that they probably wouldn't do. And I also believe that those people that do those things are very well trained to understand who out of the crowd is much more susceptible to these suggestions of walking around like a chicken, or not being able to see somebody in the room or whatever. I mean, it does happen. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think that instantaneous hypnosis is, in my opinion, very far-fetched. Not impossible, obviously, because some things can happen instantly no matter what you're doing. But most things take time. If you're going to reprogram your subconscious, it is usually pretty hardwired, and it is very, very embedded with patterns and predictability and things that we know about our past that are helping us to move forward in a safe way. Our mind wants to keep us safe, and so that it's not going to go out on a limb necessarily. But it takes time to create new pathways and unwind some of the other ones. And if you look at or listen to Joe Dispenza's stuff, there's a lot of science behind it. And this is not smoke and mirrors. This is not something that actually is woo-woo or outside of the normal paradigm. It is something now that we've come to accept as fairly normal. And a lot of people that want to quit smoking or lose weight will go see a clinical psychologist to perhaps, help them through that. And you can do it yourself. I mean, it is kind of difficult, I think, though, because when you're in that state, you're really in that dream state. And some people do have control of that dream state, lucid dreaming, things like that. But most of us don't. If you look at Edgar Cayce's story, the great American prophet, he could get at that state or to that state, but he could not remember any of it. They called him the sleeping prophet. So it was like he was actually a little deeper than that even. But the point is that sometimes when you do self-hypnosis, a lot of people look at that idea. But in my opinion, somebody that is hypnotized, quote unquote, is not going to remember anything consciously. So I'm not sure how you're going to capture any of that information, or how you're going to program yourself, unless maybe you're listening to some music, or you have something suggestible going on, in your ears or around you, whatever. But it is really a part of normal medicine and approaches in our medical system. Not everybody does it. I mean, let's just face it, we'd rather, take some medication and get things done and changed really quickly. And there's a lot of, quick fixes that are out there that's supposed to work. But I mean, really, the bottom line is you have to do the work, and you have to put a lot of effort into changing or updating or rewiring your subconscious mind. And it is very helpful if you can find somebody that knows what they're doing to actually help you through that. Now, the quantum healing hypnosis technique that I used, that I learned from Dolores Cannon, who did it over 45 years or so. She's not with us anymore. However, the family, the daughter, still keeps it going. But it is a tool also to really have a conversation with the subconscious. And in some ways, it appears that we're using the subconscious to reach outside of ourselves to spirit guides, or the source, or the universe, or the Akashic records, or whatever that is. I do believe that the subconscious mind is like the hub and the connection to everything there is. Sort of like your wireless internet router or box in your house. It is only the part of the system that connects you to all there is, really. Well, at least on the internet. I'm sure there's more than just the internet, but it's vast and very overwhelming with information. And I believe that's the same with all that medium of information that's out there. And I do believe that nothing really goes away. We don't go away. Information doesn't go away. Everything is really still there and available to all of us. And so doing or using hypnosis is a very good practice to connect and actually get valid information that is not being manipulated by our conscious mind, or our doubts, or our programming through life, all that. And so I do suggest that people that are really struggling with where they want to go, what they want to do or not knowing what they want to do, or they have issues with physical problems, emotional problems, spiritual problems, issues, it is a very good tool to use that, because we can heal ourselves. And I do believe that naturally, at least, everything that is going on physically in our body is a message that our subconscious uses to try to direct us or slow us down or stop us or change our life. And so learning how to pay attention to that and learn how that works is very, very important. So it's not really scary. I know a lot of people that I have that are considering hypnosis, they're very scared because they think that while they're under that, something is going to happen, or they're going to be very vulnerable to suggestions and things and evil and all this. Well, sure, that stuff could happen, I guess. But I know, at least for me, I always record it. So everything that is said or done is there for them to look at. So there's nothing that I'm hiding behind anyway. I can't speak for everybody. And it is scary, because going under and losing what we think is our control, the conscious mind, is something that is way out of our comfort zone. And I get it. It is something that really scares the bejeebies out of people. But hypnosis is an awesome tool. Very, very awesome tool. And I do suggest that, if you are finding yourself in dire straits, or you need some assistance that you can't seem to get out or work through your conscious mind, then it may be something to consider. But be picky about who you're going to use, and make sure that you have a bona fide trained person that knows what they're doing, so that you can be guided properly through the process. Because it can influence behavior and perceptions and all that stuff. And it is really the control of the hypnotist, if you will, or the practitioner, to make sure that you are guided properly. And it's just so cool, though, really, in a lot of ways, that you can just talk to people. You can speak to a client over time using a process. There's a lot of different processes, but you can literally change somebody's life just by talking to them, allowing them to get into that relaxed state, that theta state, that one right before you go to sleep, and hold them there. That's really, really interesting. Now I want to switch over to a little bit more about the mind control and more of our modern times. Now, yes, you can use hypnosis for controlling the mind or changing the mind, which we talked about. And I do believe that there are organizations out there and processes to put people under serious and dire stress, duress, to influence behaviors. And over time, they will, of course, change, and they will become a different person. They will be programmed, quote unquote, with something different. And I don't doubt that happens. I've done a lot of research into that, looking into that, and sure, can't prove anything, obviously, but there are a lot of people that do claim to be manipulated mentally and hypnotically, if you will, through a process to help them or make them somebody different. I grew up in a religious commune, and I can certainly understand what that's like. Religious beliefs and rituals will definitely, over time, change your paradigm and how you think, and what you look at and how you do things. And that's just one example, of course. Now, there are those out there that would love to use this very much in a bad way. And as you look at some of these things I'm going to talk about, if you find it interesting, go and find it yourself, right? And look at it yourself. And so what is happening now is, through technology, it appears that somebody who has the technology, or some people that have the technology, can influence thoughts, ideas, programs of the mind. They can control the masses, if you will. You don't have to look too deeply to understand that. All you really got to do is look at social media, for example. That is one way through technology that a lot of paradigms and ideas change in the population. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you're flipping through TikTok, which seems to be turned off now for the United States. But you can find yourself on a algorithm that will, over time, begin to influence your ideas. And I say influence because what happens is you'll begin to notice that once somebody or some people or groups of people begin to catch on to an idea of something, like let's say the drones and their theories about what's going on there. The next thing you know, everybody's talking about it. Everybody's putting their ideas, and everybody begins to believe in a certain way. Things begin to happen, and it changes our patterns and our ideas in how we feel about things. And my youngest daughter said it best. She said that social media has ruined our generation, her generation, and of course the generations that are coming up. And it's not just the younger generations, because older people are also doing the same thing. I'm 64, and it's very easy to find myself rolling through shorts and videos and things like that, especially if you get on a good algorithm and all the things that you like to hear about are beginning to pop up. So it's really easy to find yourself staring at a screen or something of the sort, or listening to something, YouTube, any of that. Then next thing you know, it's like hours later, and what have you done, right? With your day. And so you have to be careful with that, of course. I mean, that's kind of a whole nother subject. However, I wanted to drill down into something a little bit more sinister, I guess you'd say. There are those out there, I'm not going to say they or them or whatever, but there are those organizations out there, and scientists and very, very smart and clever people that are now beginning to use technology on the general population. And one of those, I'll just talk about one of them that I know about. I've heard about. It's secondhand information, but people that have been in Iraq and things like that. It's called the Voice of God is the nickname. There's a lot of fancy names for that. I will put a link in the comments about, or that has a video of somebody that was part of developing that technology or technologies like that. And he explains it very well, probably much better than I can. But the idea is to use like microwave signals or energy, for example, to actually insert thoughts into people's minds. Another name that they call this, like voice to skull, is another nickname for that. And the example I wanted to use was some of the folks I know that went to the first Iraq invasion or Gulf War. When, if you remember the story, a whole lot of the Iraqis, walked in, put their arms down, their weapons rather, and just gave up, quoting that they heard the voice of God or Allah or whatever it is that they believe in their God, that they needed to do that. And this was one of the earlier experiments on big populations with this technology. And it sounds extremely powerful. If I were you, I would go look at that. I mean, because they also use things like this now, apparently, to even insert visual, to be able to read the thoughts of people, to be able to see what they're thinking, their actually pictures in their mind, all of those things, using AI. And, this is really going a very hardcore way, if these things are true. I am not saying they are. I'm just saying I've heard some secondhand accounts, and I see people, like in this video, Dr. Robert Duncan from Harvard talks about having helped develop this kind of stuff, maybe not knowing what he was getting into. Sometimes people get into projects like this thinking it's going to be for a very wholesome reason and that they're one of the good guys. And it turns out to be a deep, dark project, perhaps, that is outside of the law or constitutionally illegal. And the problem is then they get so embedded in it that that they can't get out. It's sort of like getting into a gang and then you're trying to leave, because you become more moral or you've changed your mind. And you've heard stories about that is almost nearly impossible to get out, at least with your life. And so I'm not saying that anybody or people or everybody rather that's out there are bad people that are developing this technology or part of this. If you listen to Dr. Stephen Greer's most recent podcasts, he talks about this very thing. And he's more aligned with the alien and UFO agenda and the technologies that we have. And it talks about that a lot of these people are good people that just found themselves embedded way deeper than they thought that they were, and now they can't get out. And so it's very difficult. And that's really difficult, actually, when you're starting to think about the safety of your family and all these things. However, there's some other examples. I think I have talked about this in other podcasts, but it is not outside of the norm these days to have a thought about something. I was driving down the road and I was passing an RV sales place, dealership. And I remember not saying to myself, in my mind, I had the thought in my mind that, maybe we should revisit that idea of getting an RV. I didn't say it, I didn't text it, none of those things. And when I got to where I was going, I was popping on Facebook or one of the social media things, and I had ads all over the place about RVs. And this was not anything I typed, texted, searched, said, any of that. So, that's just one example. There's a lot of examples. Just this morning, for example, I was thinking about my propane tank that I bought for my RV and the connections that I needed, and that I may have spent too much money on what I did connect it with. There in the ads on the articles I was looking at before I started this podcast was a fitting that I really should have bought to begin with. Instead of spending the money I did, it was like $8. And I was like, I spent 80 or 90 or something like that on something. And so that kind of stuff does happen, is not outside of the possibilities, because our technology, if you really were to drill down on the technology we have and we've had for a long time, you would not be surprised whatsoever. And with the advent of artificial intelligence coming in, that is going to be assisting with a lot of these things and helping those that want to control populations do it much faster and easier and monitor it much quicker. Yeah, we are in a very dystopian society, if you ask me. And I don't think that that's anything we're going to be able to change. I just think that we have to find ways to protect ourselves as good as possible. The old tinfoil hat thing is never, or is not going to work anymore, according to Dr. Duncan in the video. There's probably other ways to do that, and I think meditation is a good way. Certain types of music, distancing yourself from social media, different things that influence you. There's a lot that we can do. Let's not let the simple things that are out there begin to control our minds, change our belief systems, change our paradigms, change our ideas of what good and bad are, all of those things, because we really do it to ourselves in a lot of ways. Yes, there's technology out there in my belief system that can do these things, and are probably doing these things. There are witnesses that will testify that they have been a target of interest and that they've been bombarded with a lot of these technologies in their mind, right? Causing them to want to do harm to themselves because it's so intense. Yes, those things are probably out there, and I wouldn't say 100% because I can't prove it to you because I've not seen the machines. I have seen some by people, free energy things that they say don't exist, yet they do. I'm not saying that they are not there, but I do think there's a lot of simple things we can do to back ourselves out of that a little bit better, and to distance ourselves from some of the programming that's happening out there. begin to really focus the thoughts in our mind that will program our subconscious much differently. Remember, our subconscious does not know the difference between what you think or visualize and what is happening in our reality, or what we feel like is happening in our reality. So do yourself a favor and program yourself and try to stay away from those things that are negatively influencing you and become somebody that you would like to be instead of allowing the system to do that for you. I encourage you guys to go to my website at lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com. There's contact page, booking page, services, products, all those things. But I mostly want to encourage you guys to talk about these things. And I would love to talk to you guys about it, work with you guys, and help you through this process and help you understand how you can do things better for yourself. Will we ever be perfect? No, but I can give you some great ideas. And you will hear from me many, many more times. But I do encourage you to reach out to me or somebody that can help you through this process. Stay strong and live your life.